2017. The year information about hidden camps filled with Muslim minorities located in Xinjiang, China, got leaked out to the press. Human rights activists and organizations called to action as news of these events began to surface all over social media. Now, the question is, what chain of events has led to the current situation in China? What is happening? And why?
Brings us up to date now on the situation there.
Bloody riots broke out, pitting ethnic Uyghur Muslims against the dominant Han Chinese.
Innocent Uyghur people.
The money that they generate is because of China.
From China's perspective, they think it's worth it. They want to make sure Xinjiang is...
Muslims have been living in China ever since the 7th century, but it was during the 18th century that clashes of violence occurred. It was in opposition to the influx of immigrants that left overpopulated areas of China to live in regions that had not been under direct Chinese control. Later, Uyghurs founded an independent Islamic republic to avoid assimilation into Han Chinese culture. That republic ceased to exist in 1934. In the 1940s, however, the two factions of KMT and CCP were at civil war with each other. Following the retreat of KMT nationalists to Taiwan, the Chinese Communist Party gained full control of the mainland. Following the founding of the People's Republic of China, the people were divided into 56 ethnic groups, 10 of which were Muslim minorities of Wei, Uyghur, Kazakh, Dongzhang, Kyrgyz, Salar, Tajik, Uzbek, Banan, and finally Tatar. It's important to note that the core value of this new regime is in socialism above all else. The party believes the triumph of its socialist values will only happen with one main unit in control of social and economic factors. With this belief in mind, the CCP took extreme measures to ensure order and to nullify any possible threats to the system. Later, from 1966 to 1969, mosques were defaced, copies of Quran were destroyed, Muslims were prohibited from going on the religious pilgrimage of Hajj, and expressions of all religious beliefs were banned by the Communist Red Guards. In the 1970s, Western nations established diplomatic ties to China. Introducing the concept of free market allowed the officials in power to solidify China's global economic position. With methods such as the 5-year plan that consisted of land reform, social reform, cultural reform, and economic planning, China quickly became the fastest growing economy ever in history. With the death of Zhao, the chairman of China, in the year 1976, the communist regime tried to implement more relaxed politics towards Muslim communities. But the damage was already done. Uyghurs and other minorities still suffered from ethnically targeted restrictions. Now China was in full view of global eyes and had to stay under the radar to avoid foreign interposition, while allowing private companies to grow and accept foreign investments. This worldview soon changed as the regime lost its composure while attempting to regain control in the 1989
peaceful popular uprising against the oppressiveness of communist rule, a campaign for China's renewal in an atmosphere of freedom and democracy.
The government has to admit that this demonstration is a patriotic demonstration.
Tiananmen Square. Thousands of students started a pro-democracy protest demanding greater political freedom. The number of protesters grew up to 1 million at its peak. On the 4th of June, days after the implementation of martial law, thousands of troops stormed the area using tanks, tear gas, and machine guns, firing on unarmed protesters. Estimated number of deaths, number of detained demonstrators, number of executions.
As the army units approached the center of the city, they were firing into side streets, killing and injuring scores of incomprehending and unarmed men, women, and children. In a few minutes, a city that had been entirely peaceful was being turned...
China says the camps stop Muslim Uyghurs from becoming extremists and offer free job training. But now an inside look in the Chinese government's own words. A leaked 9-page memo reads like a how-to manual, telling officials to strictly implement measures to prevent escape.
他们安居乐业，享受着宪法所规定的宗教信仰自由，所以呢，根本不存在你刚才提到的一些报道当中说的所谓的新疆维族人的问题。
From 1992 to 2015, 16 acts of terrorism happened that are linked to the Uyghurs in China. However, the CCP has used these events as an excuse to subjugate all of its Muslim population to unfair and inhumane treatment. Today, 22 million Muslims live in China. The evidence gathered from human rights activists and satellite images show locations within and also surrounding Beijing and other cities in China that house Muslims. Independent outlets suggest that there are approximately 8 million Muslims kept in these camps by the Chinese state. A letter to the UN raised a discussion in an attempt to address the issue. But instead, 4 days following the discussion, 37 countries defended China's remarkable achievements in the field of human rights. Testimonies from escapees confirm the reports of torture and abuse. Men are hung by their wrists, forced to kneel or squat in stress positions, deprived of sleep, and beaten. Women are subjugated to systemic rape, sterilization, and forced abortions in these camps. Survivors named Gulzira and Rukiye stated that men would put bags on the heads of the ones they wanted. Also, the seizure of 13 tons of products made from human hair, suspected of being forcibly removed from Uyghurs by the US Customs and Border Protection, is believed to come from these concentration camps, prisons, and forced labor factories housing Uyghurs. In attempts to de-extremify, the CCP has banned hijab and other religious practices. China is accused of keeping thousands of Uyghur children away from their Muslim parents and attempting to indoctrinate them in camps posing as schools or orphanages. The birth rate of Uyghurs has dropped 80% from 2013 to 2019. Communist officials said the fall in birth rate was caused by the comprehensive implementation of the family planning policy, and admitted that the birth rate has fallen, but following the family planning rules has been voluntary. It still denies the rounding up of Uyghur Muslims based on alleged extremism on grounds such as regular prayer, and the active monitoring extends beyond the use of cameras and AI to mass DNA collection, constant security checks of even personal mobile phones.
some very disturbing drone footage that's been widely shared around the world. This is almost certainly over northern China, over Xinjiang. Can you tell us what is happening here?
I cannot see, this video. This is not the first time you show me. I still remember last year you showed me what is happening in Xinjiang.
In Xinjiang,
but,
exactly.
But let me tell you this. Xinjiang, have you been to Xinjiang yourself?
No, I never have.
You know, Xinjiang is regarded as the most beautiful place in Xinjiang. There's a Chinese saying, you do not know how big China is.
Ambassador, that is not beautiful coverage, however, is it?
You know, Xinjiang, that is exactly what I'm going to tell you. Since 1990, Xinjiang has completely changed because there's thousands of terrorist attacks. People cannot...
That was 10 years ago. Can I ask you why people are kneeling, blindfolded and shaven and being led to trains in modern China? What is going on there?
I do not know where you get this videotape. You know, sometimes you have a transfer of prisons and prisoners, you know, in any country.
During this interview on BBC News, the ambassador of China, Liu Jiaming, was shown the footage of groups of Muslims being detained, blindfolded, and still denied the existence of concentration camps, saying that these accusations are baseless and there's no truth to them. Some countries have condemned the actions of China and deemed it necessary to keep the peace. US and some of the European governments have stated their concern for the Uyghur Muslims. But the situation has not changed. The problem we face is beyond just politics. China is a global infrastructure and is set to surpass the US economy in less than a decade. In 2019 alone, China shipped more than $450 billion worth of goods to the United States. Since the US exports to China were only $106 billion, there's a $345 billion US trade deficit with China.
Population growth in Uyghur jurisdictions in that area has fallen by 84% between 2015 and 2018. 84%.
That's not right.
China is the second largest foreign holder of US treasuries by owning 1.07 trillion of it. By mid-2020, China was owed over $5.6 trillion of world debt. Western conglomerates such as Chicago Stock Exchange, AMC, Legendary Entertainment Group, Disney, NBA, and many more are partly owned by Chinese investments and depend on its revenue. Money, power, and influence are the words to describe China. Economic factors outplay the political ones. Therefore, the influence of human rights organizations, activists, and even governments are negligible to the amount of control China has in the global market. Hearing this must be disappointing to the ones who want to help. There are ongoing investigations and petitions that are submitted to global organizations. The best way we might be able to help is to educate ourselves of the politics and the events surrounding the topic so that we can voice our readiness to help and share the knowledge with others.